Hello, hello. Happy Friday. It is March the 8th, and we are live with Friday question of the week. So happy to see so many people already buzzing in the chat, and Bonnie hit it on the head there. Excited to be joining in Nashville, Tennessee. This is a topic I should fully understand in my state. So, Bonnie, thank you for that. You are absolutely right. This is a topic that everyone should understand in their state or province. I get asked this all the time. And frankly, this is one of those things where it's just a quick Google search away. um, so I'm happy to be on here and answer. Like I say, I get asked all the time, what's the difference between the declaration of intent and the vows in a wedding? And like I said, you can Google that. All the articles say the same thing. So we're not doing rocket science here today. I don't want anyone to go away after having heard. Well, I can just Google this. So see ya. Love that you're here. Stick around. You might learn a thing or two. This is something that I had to figure out when I got into officiating. Wanted to make sure I didn't break the law. It is quite a responsibility if you are doing the legal part. And so, really excited to cover that with you today. But another huge reason why I go live is not just to answer the question of the week so I can get a link that I can send all the future people are going to ask me this really important question. I also like to party with you guys live. And so, Sandra, right off the bat, hola a todas. I'm working on my Duolingo Spanish, so thank you. I think that means hello to everyone. I'm just in unit 7 of lesson 3 or something. Anyway, good to see you, Sandra. Love that you're here from beginning to end ceremonies. You are golfing with your son. Well, you're his caddy, which is pretty awesome. So a shout out to you, and you win today for first comment in the chat at 11 minutes before start time. Ben is here in Grand Forks working on some wedding contract packages. Ben, always working away. Love to see you here. And Mark is here. He says, you put something in the chat here yesterday. It's not here now. That is weird, Mark, because in the past you have tagged the wall less than 24 hours, and it's there. So I don't know what happened. I would never remove any of your comments, Mark. Well, don't try that. Don't provoke. Don't see how far you can go. But I love that you're here and love that you're commenting. And Sabrina's here in California still. Booked a wedding via an online chem check. Awesome. Oh, you call it a chemical check, which just has a little bit more of a like an austerity to it. A chemical check. Chem check, vibe check. Sounds like you vibed with your couple. That's awesome. You're up to 6 this year. That's awesome. Need more? Yeah, you can do 52. So good luck. All the best to you, Sabrina. Glad to hear you are building. It's still kind of the season where I'm getting, believe it or not, I'm getting New Brunswick couples are reaching out and asking if I will officiate for them this summer. And typically I'm booked. I do have one weekend still open, which is interesting. So it's just a matter of, the right couple hitting the right date. John is here, just finished up the website. Oh my gosh, John, that is awesome. You should share it with the world. Isn't it J. Cooper Officiant? Is it something like that? Feel free to share it in the chat, John. I'd love to see it. John purchased his website from us. Again, we designed this website to take the headache out of wedding officiants who want to go pro and say, oh, I want my Google My Business profile. I should have a website. I want people to see my work. But man, it is such a headache. When I was starting as an officiant years ago, I wanted a website right away. I had no idea where to turn. And it was just a major, major headache. We've made it really simple. John grabbed that package. Looks great. And so feel free to humble brag in the chat, John. Love that you're here. And congrats on finishing up the site. Good for you. Ben is here. Kind of spinning a yarn in the chat. Mark's house. He realized he has 14 minutes left until live. Papers everywhere. That part is true. Good thing you're not seeing my desk. Coffee brewing, literally in my hand. Wi-Fi whirling away. All of a sudden, his PC flashes. Update system, yes. I sent you a message, Ben. Didn't know it was private, but I said I have a Mac, so that can't happen, right? I've never had. I had my Mac restart one time, just decide to restart, and that has happened. But haven't had any tech meltdowns yet. Doris is here. Good weather. That's good to hear. Glad you're here. Bonnie is again super on it with wanting to understand this topic interstate. Chuck is here from Massachusetts. Ralph and Karen, Spokane, good to see you. Tamara, Ava, hola. Sheila from Toronto, good to see you. Today's sunny and beautiful in Connecticut. Yes, it is sunny and gorgeous here in New Brunswick after yesterday's. I remember Ben saying there was some terrible weather moving up through North Dakota, and I said, keep it out west. No, it came here. Anything out there always ends up here about a day later, and yesterday was miserable. So thanks for the warning, Ben. If it's beautiful there today, we're going to be okay today. If it's beautiful there today, we're going to be okay tomorrow. Thanks for being here. Lisa's here from New Jersey. Good to see you. And now I would really like to just get into the declaration of intent. Like I said, I was really concerned when I started officiating in Ontario that I might break some laws. I think this is what keeps officiants up at night. You do a wedding and you realize you didn't marry them at all, especially if, for example, and you do hear about this years later, they're filing for legal separation or divorce even, and they go to get their marriage records, and the marriage was never done properly, which can basically create a cascade of legal complications, etc., etc. You never want that to happen as an officiant, and so you want to make sure you tick all of the boxes that are required legally. We can get up and do a ceremony. And I know, for example, in England, on the other side of the pond, places are legal, but not people. I find that fascinating. So couples have to get married in a place that has been legalized by the government. And there is, I know, a push for marriage solemnization reform right now. So if you're just kind of a celebrant in England, you don't typically have to worry about this. But in the US and in Canada, you have to make sure you do things properly. I said in Canada because it's lawyers and ministers for the most part that are only allowed to solemnize or conduct officiating of wedding ceremonies in Canada. The States, you can get ordained online in minutes for free and just do it. And, again, you should know what you're doing. Part of that understanding of making things legal is the declaration of intent. So the way I want to lay this out today is I want to talk about the declaration of intent. Then I want to talk about vows and what's the difference. I want to show you some examples. I just did a quick Google search, and there are websites that kind of talk about the legal stipulations. And then I want to wrap up by showing you my own script. If you're a member of Unboring Wedding Academy, you've seen it 1,000 times. You use it as your template. Maybe you use it pretty rote when you start. I do encourage that. I say plagiarism is welcome when you're new and it's your first time. But also, maybe you've tweaked it and made it your own. And to Doris's point, hopefully you understand in your state. I say this in the course, and especially in the pro course, which talks about the business side. If you're going to do this more and more, you want to understand those legal boxes that you have to tick in your state. Every state is different. Every province is different. Every country is different. Australia, massively different than England and its members of Unboring Wedding that have taught me that. All the little intricacies and places they live. We've had Peter in Morocco chime in here. So lots going on. And that's what I would say is your responsibility. But let's just talk about, and I do think that's the impetus. That is what causes people to reach out and say, what's the difference between declaration of intent? Should I care? Does it matter? Declaration of intent, vows, one, the other, etc. Let's try to straighten that out, okay? I promised you I would, so here we go. The declaration of intent. Lean back, days of yore. This reminds me of Seth Meyers' bit. Back in my day, this was never really in my day. This goes farther than that. I am turning 45 this month, which I'm feeling it, feeling that age. But Before that, in previous times, uh, the declaration of intent comes from a period, and again, it's not fully disappeared, so I'm not saying that this is ancient history, but it does come from a time where most couples were married in a very religious setting, a high church setting, by a clergy person, and they had to in the ceremony they had to basically assent that they were there to get married and they understood what was going on. And if you want to think of like a totally farcical wedding ceremony, I think of Prince of Thieves, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, Kevin Costner from the 90s, where like the sheriff, is it Alan Rickman, is like force marrying Maid Marian. And that's just an example where, the priest is just going through it. They don't care whether or not she gives her consent or assents to it. And, let's face it, it's strange that this topic is coinciding with International Women's Day. Uh, Happy International Women's Day, by the way. Historically, sometimes women did not have a say. Even though this question was asked, she was more or less coerced to say yes. The declaration of intent then is a question that the person presiding over the ceremony asks each member of the couple. Essentially, are you here of a sound mind and of your own volition to get married? And do you understand what's going on? They're declaring their intent, what they're there to do, to pledge their lives to each other and get married. It's a big deal to say, I'm in this for life. And that's why it was important in the ceremony to say, I do. That's where the I do's come from. So, we have a couple of shorthand kind of monikers for wedding ceremonies: your I do's and tie the knot. Tie the knot is from that very ubiquitous unity ritual, the hand fasting, tying their hands together and tying the knot. Some couples opt for that now as just one option of many, many rituals. And there are so many. I had a member reach out this week, and I had shot him a Bonjoro. So it's saying, my couple is opting for the whiskey in a box with a note. It's a unity ritual. They want to open it every single year and reread this note and think about this day. Have you ever done something like that, Mark? And my answer was no, but I love these ideas. There's so many unity rituals. Hand fasting is one of many now. That's where you get tie the knot. And saying your I do's, of course, comes from that really pivotal, essential part of the wedding ceremony, historically and traditionally, where the person presiding had to ask, are you here? Do you stand here of a sound mind to pledge your lives in solemnity of marriage, etc.? And the answer was typically, I do, from each party. And theoretically, if one of them did not say I do, then the ceremony would not proceed. Okay? So that's where it comes from. Now we are up to present day. Is this done in ceremonies? Is it necessary in ceremonies? Again, we're just covering declaration of intent right now. We're not talking about vows. Declaration of intent then is just that question. Do you stand here today? Do you come here to be married? Do you come of your own volition? Different ways of phrasing it. And that each member says, I do. Do you need to do that in the ceremony? Do you need to ask them that question, that they are there intending to pledge themselves and be married today? The answer is, it depends. Okay. A lot of places do not require that anymore. Okay. So if you're worried about that and keeping you up at night, I really recommend that you find out. And there are lots of websites out there that try to update themselves, but marriage laws change all the time. You cannot go wrong by calling your local judiciary, the places that actually register the marriage when you're done your part. I know a lot of members of the course on Boring Wedding Academy and inside our community that literally call their local judiciary office the courthouse Whatever it is, you find out who actually registers the marriage. In New Brunswick, it's Service New Brunswick. And I submit papers to Vital Statistics, but it's Service New Brunswick essentially. That's where I get the marriage forms. And I could call and ask them, what is there anything I need to do in the ceremony, or what legally, as an officiant presiding over the ceremony, must I do to make sure the marriage is legally registered? Some states are very strict about how the forms are filled out. If there's like a mistake and it's not initialed or a blank, then it's a lot of red tape. New Brunswick is pretty loosey-goosey. I, again, did a quick search. I want to show you what I found. This is from North Carolina. And I know there's lots of you in the chat who are officiants, do this professionally. Love that you're here. Feel free to pop in the chat whether or not you must ask a declaration of intent question. I would love to see those of you who are here. If you have to, that would be really, really cool. Ava says, do you like to include rituals? Most of my couples, your question is a bit loaded because what I like, I try to stay away from what I like and don't like because of my mantra. They're the boss. It's their wedding. Some rituals can be really fun. I believe these rituals are very meaningful. Words make worlds, I always say. Symbols are really important. They give us anchors in our minds. And so I do like unity rituals. I think they can be important. But for whatever reason, 90% of my couples do not choose any sort of unity ritual. Maybe it's generational. Maybe it's geographical. Maybe it's New Brunswick couples. I don't know. But most couples just want the fun story, vows, rings, pronounce them married, sign some papers, come back, present them, boom, done, 25 minutes or so. I almost never do a ritual. That's a whole other topic for another time. So I just Googled states that require declaration of intent. North Carolina popped up. So just wanted to show you, have a look here at, this is just their North Carolina judicial branch. What are the requirements to get married in North Carolina? What are the requirements for someone under 18 to marry? Good things to know. And then here, what are the requirements for a marriage ceremony? As officiants, this is of particular interest to us. And you will see here, I'm just using this as an example. I'm not going to go state by state if you're wondering, okay, I'll wait till he comes around to Hawaii or something. No, just going to use this one where you will check up in your own state and see things like this. Couples who want to marry must obtain a marriage license before the ceremony. Great. In New Brunswick, the couple must also get their marriage license. I can't do it. The marriage ceremony must be conducted by a recognized officiant, okay? And then, of course, you might need to phone and ask, am I recognized? That's kind of ambiguous there. But then both parties must solemnly declare their intent to marry. I find that interesting. So there's no specific, and then following the ceremony, at least 2 witnesses are required to sign. There seems to be no specific language around the question that I can see here. If you were a North Carolina officiant, if I were, I might reach out to them and ask more probing questions than this. But it seems like, for example, they would like to see a declaration of intent here, where they must solemnly declare their intent to marry. To cover your bases at the very least, that means no matter what is in the ceremony or what isn't in the ceremony, you would want, if you're a North Carolina officiant, and if there is one here, say hi in the chat and let us set it straight, just because we'd love to know, for example, comparing this kind of ambiguous general language to the more specifics, you would want to include that question. Sam, do you solemnly declare your intent to marry Alex today? That should cover it. And then Sam says, I do. And then you ask the question to Alex, I do. And you're good to go. You've checked that off, okay? That is the requirement there. That is the intent to marry. Now, I also want to jump in here. This is from British Columbia. I just, again, was Googling around. BC has a system of commissioners, and I did see a BC person here. Shout out to, let me scroll back here. Who said hello from BC? Kelowna, that's right. Ruth is here from Kelowna, but in LA. Okay, so Ruth is probably familiar with this. BC has marriage commissioners, but you can also get a full-blown officiant. But this is an example of a ceremony they provide, and you will see this is just a government ceremony. It's just 2 pages long. Uh, and you can see this section here. There's this, I declare I don't know of any lawful impediment, that each of them replies. But then here, the script says of the officiant, I ask you to give answer to these 2 questions. Do you, party 1, undertake to afford to party 2 the love of your person, the comfort of your companionship, the patience of your understanding? It seems to be, again, a sort of vows slash declaration of intent, which this is why we're having this conversation. The waters are a bit muddy when it comes to what's a declaration of intent and what are vows. This is provided by the government, and it seems very vowy. And I say that because when you scroll down, see, they say I do. So that's the kind of following the tradition of declaration of intent. But then we do get into the marriage vows section down here. Let the couple join their hands and repeat after me. I call on those present to witness. I take you to be my lawful wedded wife. And this is a repeat as opposed to I do. Okay, so again, is this legally required? Ruth would know. I'm not sure. I brought as a prop, and just to show that I am very well prepared, I brought the New Brunswick Marriage Act. And when I moved here from Ontario, I was shocked. I read the whole thing. Yep, all the legalese, and was particularly interested in the ceremony part. And there is absolutely nothing required in the way of a ceremony. In New Brunswick, the wedding is more like a legal contract. So I could sit down personally. I've always said, oh, I'm not comfortable not asking the couple to make promises and make vows. I really think that that's what marriage is. As an officiant, you're vocalizing your commitment to this person. In New Brunswick, the government doesn't seem to care about that. They're very strict on who can and can't be an officiant. You have to be clergy or a lawyer. But this ceremony can essentially be non-existent. I can sign papers with a couple at a coffee shop, and they don't even need to say anything. They just need to understand the document that they're signing, the marriage license. They go and get it at Service New Brunswick, and so they put them through a couple of paces there. And then I think the theory is, having done all that, they come away with that piece of paper, they understand what they're doing, and then they come to me, and I can just sign it for them as a legal officiant. So that is perhaps the other extreme, where we don't need to do any declaration of intent, or frankly anything at all except sign papers. Okay, so hopefully that covered off the declaration of intent. Figure out in your state or province if you need to get them, as in North Carolina, to say specific words. I know in Australia, because I've coached Australian celebrants as well, there's a training process for every celebrant in Australia. You can't get your wedding officiant license, your celebrancy license, without going through a bunch of classes. Again, the U.S. would be the other extreme. Get ordained online in 5 minutes, say you're religious clergy, and the government can't question that for the most part. Australia, you have to take a course. When you get in the ceremony, you have to make the couple say paragraphs. It's very, very strict and austere about what they have to say. And if it's not done, it's not legal. So that's covering off that. Okay. Now, the difference between that and vows. Okay. And this is where, like we saw in the BC example, a bit of murky overlap. And that's where we're getting now. Because in most places, most jurisdictions now, they do not require a declaration of intent. Some people still put it in just because it's tradition. And then also, of course, the vows sound very declaration of intent-ish, esque. And we saw that in the BC example. So it's very understandable why there's so much confusion around this. So I want to explain vows and how they're different, although the BC example didn't help very much. And then I want to show you my own script that I used in Ontario, that I use here in New Brunswick, and then I share with everybody inside Unboring Wedding Academy who uses it. And of course, the caveat I always say is find out if you need to say specific legal words. Okay. Let me pop in the chat before we cover off vows really quick. Ruth is coming in here, being our resident BC officiant from Kelowna. Only the bolded sections are required in any ceremony we do. That is interesting. Okay, so that that was helpful. So the example that I showed you, they're bolded sections. Only that's the only part that's required. Jillian, it says, I'm allowed to marry people at a coffee shop after asking a couple of people nearby to be witnesses. That's Ottawa for you, right? So that's the Ontario marriage laws. Again, yeah, you need witnesses, but you don't need much else. Mike says in Florida they need to verbally consent and then they must be pronounced married. Cool. And I think that was also in the North Carolina. They must be pronounced married and they do have to consent. So Mike in Florida and anybody else in Florida would want to include a kind of declaration of intent questions just to cover things off. Ava says, is there no audio? I'm a little bit scared that I'm talking to myself. Apparently there's no audio for Ava. Hopefully everybody else still hears me. Brenda says, yes, in Vegas, you have to include declaration of intent. So I would imagine that's a Nevada state law. In Tennessee, see, I love that there's so many of you who know what you're doing. Bonnie says Tennessee, but nobody can seem to answer what it means. Okay, so I remember, Bonnie, you were like, I need to get this straight in my state. And you seem to know what you're doing, but nobody, on the other hand, nobody knows what they're doing. And hey, when you seem to know what you're doing in a sea of nobody knows what they're doing, then you are the person who knows most what they're doing. So congratulations. So hopefully, again, Bonnie, you it says yes, Tennessee, yes. So I'm wondering if it's maybe similar to North Carolina, where yeah, you have to declare your intent. In which case, just include the question. I'll show you what I do. I don't make it a big deal, but and in New Brunswick and Ontario, I was not required at all. But for tradition and for intent, I just like it. And I'll show you why. I include it and the purpose that it serves in the ceremony, the kind of ceremony that I do. Okay, good. I am getting thumbs up that I am having audio. So I would say, Ava, fix your sound, but of course she wouldn't be able to hear me. So maybe there's subtitles. Hopefully Ava gets that sorted out. So Florida, this is interesting. In Florida, witnesses are optional. That is fascinating. So we're seeing how in some places the declaration of intent is optional, in other places, and witnesses are necessary. Other places it's the opposite. Love it. I love it. I just love how this is what happens. And that's why anybody who comes on the internet and tries to get specific about this is just hopeless from the get-go. But I think what we can nail down here is understanding declaration of intent, and that it's just a question about them intending to stand here today and give themselves to each other in marriage. And whether or not that is required, you need to find out where you live. Texas, witnesses are optional too. Sabrina, cool. Okay, so let's get into vows then. And you've heard me talk about this before. I have a YouTube video about it. There are 3 ways, 3 styles to say vows, I say. The first one is just asking them a big, long question, which is, again, they say, I do. This is where it sounds very much like a declaration of intent. However, it's a lot more like making promises about the kind of, this is the distinction I make for my couples. We're going to make promises about the kind of spouse, partner, husband, wife, whatever language you want, that you want to be, that you're aspiring to be. I will be faithful to you. I promise to love you. I will be your best friend. I will be your confidant. I will never leave you or forsake you. Language like that. That is more than just saying, yes, I'm here today to get married. That really is the intent. I'm intending to be married today. That's why I'm here. The vows are a lot more about projecting into the future what you aspire to be, the kind of partner you want to be, the kind of couple that you hope to be together, and how you're going to contribute to that. It's very future projecting and making commitments and promises and vows and will. I will in the future. That essentially is, if my couples don't need any more help or advice with giving vows, that is what I say to them. I say basically fill in the blanks. I will, I promise to, I commit to, I vow to. You can include a lot of other stuff if you like, flowery, love language, and that kind of thing. But at the very least, you are saying, I will do this, I commit to this, I promise to this, and I vow to this. Mix them up a little bit. You don't want to say, I vow to, I vow to, I vow to, like some sort of robotic vending machine. But again, it is about projecting into the future and thinking about what you aspire to. So that's the vows. And if you just ask the I do question, that it's going to be similar to declaration of intent, but different in its content. The second style of vow, of course, is repeat after me. We saw this in the BC example. I, so and so, take you, so and so, to be my husband, my life partner, my friend and confidant, I will be faithful, I will be faithful. So they repeat the words after you. There's no I do in that option. The third option is you stand back and you hand them their sheets. They've written their own personal vows to each other, and they would like to read them in front of everyone right there in the ceremony. Now, a lot of couples are doing this at a first look now. I'm going to do a Friday Live pretty soon because I get asked this all the time. What do I do if my couple have already read and written their own vows and read them to each other in a private first look with the photographer? Okay, I don't want to get too much into that today because we're already at the half-hour mark. But the third option is they write and read their own vows to each other in the ceremony. And again, the guidance you want to give them is what I just told you. What kind of partner do you want to be? What kind of marriage do you aspire to? How are you going to contribute to making that happen? Think about that. It's not just a time to gush and say you're hot, you're beautiful, you're awesome, you got a nice butt, you got it. And I'm saying that because I've heard all this stuff. That you can put that in there, but I also encourage them to make promises and commitments to each other. But again, is it legal? Is it necessary? No, not really. That's where, as an officiant, um, back to words make worlds. Like when they stand up in front of all their friends and family, what are we doing here today? To me, that is the spiritual part. And I don't mean religious. I'm not targeting a certain religion or anything like that, faith, tradition, but the spiritual part, that part you feel in your chest that makes everybody cry, is the promises part, where you're looking at these two people who are saying, I will not leave you. I love you so much. I'm going to witness your whole life. Goosebumps, goosebumps. And if you dispense with that, you've really lost the beauty of the marriage ceremony, in my opinion. And that's why I want to show you my script right now. Let me share with you. Oh, I really killed the feed here. Let me put this up so you can take a look at this. If you're a member of Unboring Wedding Academy, you get this script. This is a script that I print out every time I officiate a wedding. Of course, change the names, add some things, personalize it, drop the story, and all that stuff. But you're seeing kind of behind the scenes right now of members and my own script, all my sections. Don't want to get too deep in the weeds here. I want to skip right to, you'll see how this section for me is the story and the intent of marriage. I put those as one section of my script. I'm going to tell their whole story, and then I like to wrap it up with the declaration of intent. After telling their story, what they love about each other, what everybody loves about them, then I reflect briefly. Today is hugely significant in the lives of Sam and Alex, or in this case, Jen and Brad, because they've invited us here to witness and observe that they want to promise their lives to each other. I say a little bit more about that. And then I say, having said all that, Jen and Brad, do you stand here today to give yourselves to each other in marriage? And they say, we do. Now, I definitely prep them for that moment in the rehearsal. I tell them it's coming. I don't want them to be like, huh? And I've had some officiants say, Mark, I don't really like how, when I'm telling the whole story, they're kind of like on pins and needles waiting for me to say this at the end. And I'm actually like, I really love that. That's one of my favorite parts, is they know I'm going to turn to them at some moment. Again, it's in the script. They see this, they get it. They kind of know that it's going to happen, but it helps them focus a little bit more on listening to the story and being on their toes, because they know I'm going to at some point say, and so having said all that, And if nothing else, they know that, and okay, it's time to zone back in. Because I think Retta, a member the other day, was like, the couple was chit chatting the whole time, and they seemed to be having a good time, but they weren't listening to me. To which I said, hey, you're telling their love story to their guests, and they are basking in it. They're clearly having a great time, so don't worry about it. So I love to include this. It's not necessarily a legal requirement where I am, but I love that it kind of solidifies the moment, and it's a good transition out of the story into the elements where then we move into, if there's a reading, that's where I like to put it, and then the vows. And you'll see in my script here, I include, again, this is what members get when they purchase the course. There's the full three options. For write their own vows, there's scripting and instructions for that. Repeat after me, I actually provide scripting for that. And for I provide scripting for that. Most couples just choose one of those. We'll figure that out in the wedding workshop with them, right? 4 to 6 weeks before the day. That is what Wedding Hero Wednesdays are about. But some couples decide to write and read their own vows, but then they also want to say I do vow. So they want to say, I'll keep making coffee for you. I friggin' love you so much. And oh my goodness, I'm so happy to be getting married today. That's great. And then you're like, okay, commitments, promises, do what you can there. But then really cover that off, because they'll say, well, we'd love to do I do vow. So then I'll go into this. Brad, do you take Jen to be your wife, your life partner and friend? Join her life with yours. Share with her all that will be, that kind of thing. And so some couples, when they're writing and reading their own vows, they're worried that it'll be too loosey-goosey. So they also want to do a more traditional I do response to a big, long vow question. Okay? So hopefully that was helpful. I'm going to pop back in here and see what I'm missing. I'm sure it's great stuff, but hey, I got to chit chat while you guys are having a party a little bit. So many wonderful experts with loads of experience in the chat. Lots of members of Unboring Wedding Academy and Pro. Love that you're offering your advice. Again, this is different everywhere, but what we have is enough for basic guidelines of the declaration of intent is essentially a question that you ask the couple that says, are you here intending to get married, basically? And they will say, I do to that. It's traditional. It was done by the church or clergy person. Now it's not necessary everywhere, but some states, as we've seen, do require that they profess or declare their intent to get married in this ceremony. They know what they're there for. And then, so you can include that or I was going to say disinclude it. You can disinclude it if it's not legal, but then you can move into the vows, which are more about the promises they're going to make to each other in their marriage, in their upcoming marriage, which is different than just saying, I'm here today to get married. Okay. Hopefully that was clear. I'm going to pop into the chat. If there's any questions now, please, now I will see them, because I know a lot happened. I just saw the thing tumbling down while I was talking, and good. The most important thing is Ava can hear me now, and she says it is required in Connecticut. Good. Any other questions before I pop off here and get back to International Women's Day and the last day of March break for my kids? And I'm playing bass at a coffee house tonight here in town, so I got to get back to drilling the fingers, and it's a good day. It's a beautiful day. It's a March day, and I'm so glad to be here with you, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. You guys are driving or golfing or getting ready for your weekend as well. I'm not seeing anything in the chat here. Hopefully that was helpful. Sabrina's talking to Jillian. Jillian, Jillian, I just saw Sexy Vows. My sister was at a wedding where the groom began talking about enjoying what his lady does. Oh my gosh. And they all work together in the same law firm. That's really amazing. Yes, again, I have I for the love about section, a lot of time couples will tell me what they love about each other. And of course, a lot of the time I have had to say, I love his sexy butt, because that is what she told me she loved about her beau, which, that it always gets a laugh. And so that's the kind of thing where as officiants, we are really welcomed into these intimate moments with friends, family, or lawyer colleagues and really get to enjoy. I mean, I love officiating. I'm sure you do too. It is such a blast to be invited into these beautiful moments. And like I say, we also make the beautiful moments. We craft what is happening. Our words make the reality happening. And so sometimes whether something is legal or not, again, we don't need to do vows. I insist on doing vows because, like I say, if I'm presiding over this thing with all your friends and family, I want you to make promises to each other. Again, I've been married for almost 20 years, married to a couple and family therapist. So I do know how the wedding day is such an anchor for couples moving into the future together. It could be such an important galvanizing moment for family and relatives and the couple themselves. And of course, again, people are crying. Why are they crying? Because there's like spiritual, intangible magic happening in a wedding ceremony that is second to none. And then, of course, you add to that by telling their love story in front of their, like to the family and friends in front of them, which is another unique moment that can only happen anywhere. And so it's just a beautiful thing. Okay. So I'm going to pop off of the note. It seems like I was very clear. And so I'm super happy that Paul finally arrived. From Trumbull, Connecticut. And if you missed any of this, jump on the replay. You can catch any of my lives on YouTube. Go to the live tab and get everything on replay, every live I've ever done. That's there for you. And if you want to jump in and join these elite, intrepid officiants who are just so amazing, and I've been journeying with many of them for weeks or months or even years, unboringweddingacademy.com is the way to do that. I have a business course on boringweddingacademy.com/pro. Of course, we have the love story caster that writes your couple's love story for you in 3 minutes. You can check that out at lovestorycaster.com or unboringweddingacademy.com. That's there as well. And I am working on a ceremony management platform that will be the first of its kind in the world, and that is coming later this year for members of Unboring Wedding Academy as well. You guys light me up, and so I'm thrilled to serve you in this way. And I love that I can come get to see you every Wednesday and Friday. So I'll be back on Wednesday, Wedding Hero Wednesday, where I'll continue to go through my book, Wedding Zero to Ceremony Hero. I always mess up the title, and I almost did again. And we'll just keep moving through that about how to plan the best ceremony with your couple. And again, if you missed any of those, check out YouTube channel, the live tab, and you can see any of the replays there. Thanks, everyone. I hope you have a really great weekend. It's beautiful outside, and be well. Thanks for joining again, and marry on.